So how many of you have heard of the phoenix before? Okay, not talking about like Phoenix, Arizona, but I'm talking about the bird, the phoenix. You heard about that before? Yeah, so it's a mythical bird. There's this myth, and it's described as having this golden aura around it. And it's said that only one phoenix lives at a time. There's not like flocks of them or many of them, but it's said that only one phoenix lives at a time. And then at the end of its life, the myth goes like this: the phoenix would build a nest made from aromatic wood, or wood that has this really nice fragrance to it. And then it would set the nest on fire. And as it sets the nest on fire, it would be consumed in the flames. All right? And then there would be ashes, of course, out of that. But then out of the ashes, a brand new phoenix would arise, or a brand new phoenix would emerge out of that. In fact, we'll put this logo on the screen. One of our key global impact partners, Venture, they actually use the phoenix as their logo. For those who have been around Reach Church for a while, this might look familiar to you. But Venture, it really represents, the phoenix represents the type of ministry that they do. Okay, they help to combat some of the world's greatest injustices in some of the world's toughest places. And then out of the ashes of what happens in those tough places, something beautiful arises because of the good news of the gospel. And so the phoenix often represents this idea that out of the ashes of death, of destruction, of decay, something beautiful will arise. And for those who are followers of Jesus, we're reminded of something even greater than the phoenix, and that is the resurrection of Jesus. And so today we're going to look at how the resurrection of Jesus reminds me that death is not the end, but rather the beginning. All right? And we've been going through a series called Resurrection. And, one of the things we established in this series early on was that the resurrection of Jesus actually has overwhelming proof that it did take place, that it actually did happen. And because it's true, it has a lot of practical applications and a lot of meaning for our life today and every day on a regular basis. So we're going to talk about one of those meanings this morning as we look at how the resurrection of Jesus reminds me that death is not the end, but it's actually the beginning. And we're gonna look at where we left off on our journey through 1 Corinthians chapter 15, starting in verse 35. Paul is writing this. He says, "But someone may ask, how will the dead be raised? What kind of bodies will they have?" Then he says, "What a foolish question. When you put a seed into the ground, it doesn't grow into a plant unless it dies first. And what you put in the ground is not the plant that will grow, but only a bare seed of wheat or whatever you're planting. Then God gives it the new body he wants it to have. A different plant grows from each kind of seed. In the same way, there are different kinds of flesh. One kind for humans, another for animals, another for birds, another for fish. There's also bodies in the heavens and bodies on the earth. The glory of the heavenly bodies is different from the glory of the earthly bodies. The sun has one kind of glory, while the moon and stars each have another kind, and even the stars differ from each other in their glory." So the Apostle Paul starts out this passage with a couple of questions, and these questions are asked in the context of the resurrection of Jesus. So what you got to understand, surrounding this passage, he's talking about Jesus' resurrection. So that's the context of what's happening here. And because Jesus rose from the dead, we also have something amazing to look forward to after death. Those who belong to Jesus will actually be raised from the dead as well. And because of that, Paul says there's some people who may ask some questions. They may say, hey, how will the dead be raised? And then what kind of bodies will they have? Now, those questions, as we really look into that and study that, they're really not asked by somebody who's genuinely interested in knowing what a resurrection body will look like or how this is going to actually take place. It's really questions that people are asking because they're skeptical of this whole idea. They're really skeptics about the idea of a resurrection. And so these people are really challenging this truth And they most likely wanted Paul to feel kind of stupid that he's talking about this concept of resurrection, okay? But this did not faze Paul. Paul did not let something like this bother him. In fact, he took this as an opportunity to talk about these questions. And again, some of these questions were probably asked in a sarcastic way, kind of like, hey, will the bodies be patched up versions of the old bodies? Or you're going to have patches all over them, once they rise from the dead? Or they were kind of thinking like, well, since they're disintegrating in the ground, how are they really going to be raised again? Like, I'd like to see that. Like, that's not going to happen. Again, skeptics, kind of sarcastic. And, is it going to be like a zombie apocalypse with people like coming out of their graves with, they're kind of making fun of this whole idea. But again, he's not fazed by it. He uses this as an opportunity to bring some significant meaning to this whole subject. And he even uses an argument from nature. He mentions how animals are different shapes and forms and sizes and all kinds of stuff like that. And then he talks about an example from science. The universe is filled with different kind of planet bodies. Each has its own, uniqueness and variety and form and organization to it. And his conclusion is that living things were created with different forms or bodies. Therefore, it shouldn't surprise us that God created humans to be resurrected in a different body when that time comes. And then the glory of the resurrected bodies they're different from the glory, so to speak, of our earthly bodies. Now, with that being said, there's two significant principles we're going to unpack today that Paul mentions in this passage, as we're reminded that because of the resurrection of Jesus, death is not the end, but death is actually the beginning, all right? So the first one we're going to talk about is this: life happens through death. In the first part of these verses in this passage, he said, somebody may ask, how will the dead be raised? What kind of bodies will they have? And then he said, when you put a seed into the ground, it doesn't grow into a plant unless it dies first. And what you put in the ground is not the plant that will grow, but only a bare seed of whatever it is that you're planting. Then God gives it the new body that he wants it to have. A different plant grows from each kind of seed. Now, there's a powerful concept that we want to look at here. Life happens through death. Think about a seed. Let's put a picture of the seed up there. So this is a picture of a wheat seed, okay? It's enlarged like many, 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 many times over because a wheat seed is very small, all right? Now, when you look at the seed, a seed cannot come to life unless it dies first, okay? When we talk about it dying first, we're talking about its original structure or the body of the seed breaks down. Okay, it has to break apart, it has to break down. That's what we're talking about when we say a seed dies. It breaks down. Now, a seed has the potential of a new life, of a new body inside of it, but it does not produce the new life. It does not produce the new body unless it first dies or breaks down. In fact, the seed can't produce the new life, the new body, the new fruit, unless it actually dies first. And then the original seed that is planted, and just like the scripture is saying here, it's only a single seed, right? It's not the plant itself. It's just a single seed. You don't get the full plant. No. You're just seeing the single seed. That's what you put in the ground. But once the seed dies or it breaks down from its original structure, well, what comes up out of the ground is radically different than what's put into the ground. Now here's an example of that, right? Because we see a wheat seed, up there, and the wheat seed is very small, just very tiny, and you put that one seed in the ground, but once it flourishes, once it breaks apart, okay, once it is different from its original structure and it dies, so to speak, in the ground, then all of a sudden it produces this amazing product. Like the fruit is so much more and so much different than this one little seed that was put into the ground. It reminds me of a scripture in John 12:24. Let's put that scripture up there, and it says this. It says, Jesus is talking. He said, I tell you, unless a grain of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains by itself, or one version says it remains only a single seed, but when it dies, it produces much fruit or many seeds, so to speak. So this is the same concept that Jesus is talking about. Jesus is affirming this because it produces something amazing. Who would think that one little tiny wheat seed would end up producing something amazing like this? Now, of course, this is a specific example in Corinthians, or an example, an illustration about how our resurrected bodies will have a different nature than our current bodies. They will go in, right, like as a seed, that'll break apart and die, but then they'll become something amazing and beautiful, something so much better after that. And they'll have a new supernatural life form when they're resurrected. And this is a physical illustration of that. But this principle, everybody say principle. It doesn't end there. There's also a spiritual principle that has significant application to our lives right now. And I want you to get this because I think it's powerful. It's the principle of how life happens through death. Now, what does this mean for our life? Well, there's times that we have a dream. Maybe you have a dream. Okay? Maybe a goal, something you're shooting for, or something you've been praying about, something that's in your heart, something you're hoping for. And you may have extensive plans, and you put together this pathway of how this is going to be achieved or how you're going to get there. And there could even be finances that you've invested in that particular direction. Maybe you've invested a lot of time, maybe resources, emotional energy, relational energy. And then unexpected things happen, and it derails that dream. It destroys that dream. It shatters that dream. In fact, it often feels like our dream and our plans actually die, just like that seed. It feels like it's gone forever. Maybe that all hope was lost. It reminds me of a story that happened in the early 1900s. In the early 1900s, a young man named Walt Disney had a dream of creating this amazing animated world. However, that dream faced all kinds of problems. It faced all kinds of challenges and setbacks, which included a failed animation studio, which eventually led to bankruptcy. How many of you would say, that's failure? Yeah, that's failure. Nobody would say that's failure? You want to go bankrupt? I want to go bankrupt. No, okay, you're right. It's right, failure. That's failure. And it seems like his dream was done. It's gone. Failed this, failed that, bankruptcy. But despite the death of a dream, he refused to give up. In fact, the death of his initial dream led him to come up with things and to innovate beyond the animation that he originally started with. And as a result, he actually founded Disneyland. He founded Disneyland. And from there, he literally revolutionized the entertainment industry. And his story is a reminder that the death of a dream can actually produce a new kind of life that we never expected. The death of a dream, the death of that seed can actually produce a new kind of life that we never expected. Why? Because life happens through death. In many ways, that new life that's produced can be even better than what we originally had in mind. We can't see it in the moment. We don't know how that happens in the moment. And it could be so many things. It could be, the dream of having a child, but there's been interference and obstacles that have happened all along the way. It could be that there's a certain dream for your kids or your grandkids, but right now they're on a completely different path. And you're looking at that path and you're like, this is not the dream that I have for them. This is not what I've been praying. It's the opposite of what you've been envisioning. Or it might be a dream job or a career or an education that you've dreamed about. But there's such a large gap between that dream and where you are right now, it just looks impossible. Maybe it's a relationship dream that's been significantly delayed or even destroyed, and you're thinking there's no hope in this particular area of your life. Or it could be a financial dream that you have that you've been going for, but now you're struggling just to make it, and you're like, this dream's done. It's gone. And you can fill in the blank with whatever dream that you may have, or whatever dream that may have been crushed or destroyed in your life, maybe even dead. And the truth is, there's a lot of pain involved when a dream dies. I mean, it crushes you. And it can feel like the world is caving in. It can feel like it's even hard to breathe at times because of the depth of the death that we're going through in this particular area. And we've got to remember that it's through that death process that new life can actually be formed. Just like the seed that's dying in the ground, it's breaking apart, right? Before it produces fruit, the seed coat ruptures. It literally breaks apart. When we're facing the death of a dream, that's what it feels like. We're rupturing. Things are breaking apart, falling apart. The original structure of the seed actually breaks down. We may feel like there's no hope for our dream to be fulfilled. Seems like things are completely shattered. But we've got to remember that it's this very process that can allow for growth and for new life that will come at a certain time in the future. And it's through that painful process that God is doing something beautiful on the inside of us when it feels like on the inside of us we're literally being torn apart. Now, we're not saying that God caused those things to happen in our life. That's not what we're saying at all. What we are saying, though, is that God can use those things that have happened in our life, which feels like the death of a dream. He can use those things to bring beautiful and lasting new life and results that are beyond anything we could ever imagine. That's the principle that we're talking about. And just like the plant that the seed produces this. The new life that results, that God produces in our life, will often look much different than what we ever expected, than what we ever imagined, than what we ever put down. But the end result can be even better in a unique God kind of way that produces sweeter fruit than what we ever had in mind. Okay? This is what God is doing in our life when we're being crushed. When that dream seems like it's all but gone, He's bringing new life out of your pain, out of your dream that feels like it's all but dead and gone, because new life often only happens through some kind of death. Because of the resurrection of Jesus, death is not the end, but it's the beginning. And that's God's message to you today. He's saying that to you today. The second and final significant principle we're going to unpack that Paul mentions in this passage is number 2, transformation happens through death. In the last part of this passage, he said, so it will be with the resurrection of the dead. The body that is sown is perishable, it's raised imperishable. It's sown in dishonor, it's raised in glory. It's sown in weakness, it's raised in power. It's sown as a natural body, but raised a spiritual body. If there is a natural body, then there's also a spiritual body. So the Bible tells us there's a transformation that happens to our physical bodies. Doesn't that sound good? When they get resurrected, there's a transformation that's going to take place. I get excited, when I think about that. And I'm just for fun, like if you could select your own resurrected body, what would that look like? I mean, there's all kinds of AI stuff out there. Man, you can input whatever, and you can come up with a new body for yourself in an AI kind of form, and you can get all kind of stuff. Maybe a drop-down menu. I want it to have this. I want it to have this. But think about it. Your resurrected body. If you could select your resurrected body, what would you choose? Maybe would you choose an athletic body like this? We'll put that up. Would you choose that? Maybe an athletic body. I don't know. Maybe that's something. I'd like something like that. That'd be pretty cool. Is that the kind of body you choose? Or would you choose like, no, I'm more formal. I would want a fancy body. Would you want a fancy body, okay? You want a fancy body. There you go. Maybe that's more in line with what you're thinking. That's cool, all right, no worries. Okay? Or maybe you want, I want a strong body. Okay, a strong body. There you go. Get that. Maybe that's what you're thinking for you. Or maybe you're like, no, I'm just more chill. I want something casual. I want a casual body, kind of a chill body. We'll put that up there. We have that, yeah. Just want to chill out, all right? So maybe that's more you. I don't know what it is, okay? Now, the truth is, we really don't get to select our resurrected bodies. We're just having fun, right? We're just kind of imagining here. But our future spiritual bodies Okay, it's not just like, okay, our physical bodies, they died and they get resuscitated and there we go. No, it's not that. It's more than that, all right? They're going to be a new creation, like a brand new transformation. Okay, that's what's going to happen. Now, how many of you are glad about that? Like, hey, this is good stuff, right? It is, yeah. I want you to be excited today. What will our future spiritual resurrection bodies be like? Well, I mean, honestly, I don't think we can know 100% for sure what they're going to look like, but we can have an idea about this because we can look to the body of Jesus after he rose from the dead, at his resurrected body, and we can see an idea of what ours would be like too. And so there's some things I see about his resurrected body that it seems like will be true about ours as well. One of them is that he was real. Everybody say real. Okay, some people think, well, it's just going to be this ghostly. No. Jesus was real when he rose from the dead in his resurrected body. If you were here several weeks ago in a message that I preached, one of the first messages about the resurrection in that series, in this particular series, we talked about how Jesus appeared to literally hundreds of people after he rose from the dead to validate his resurrection. And what we see is that he was still a real person. See, there was something real about his resurrected body, so we see that. We also see another element that we can learn from Jesus' resurrected body and about ours. There was a certain element of recognition. There was a certain element where he was recognizable to some degree, okay? There was some similarities that Jesus had, before he was raised from the dead, then after he was raised from the dead. Because there were some people, right, when he got around some people, and they didn't always, recognize him immediately, right? Sometimes they were like, I'm not sure, he kind of looks familiar, who is this guy? Then they're like, oh, wait. Then they eventually recognized him as being Jesus. So there was this, I'm going to call it a recognizable likeness about his resurrected body, all right, when they saw him. So we'll have a glorified body. It will not look exactly the same as our earthly body, okay? It'll be so much better than our earthly body, all right? And we're all glad about that. But it will have some elements of recognizable likeness because Jesus' body did as well. Another thing we see about this is that our resurrected bodies will be tangible. Jesus' body was tangible. People could touch him, okay? He was, tangible. And then also, in his resurrected body, he ate food. Aren't you glad about that one? We're going to eat food in our resurrected bodies. That's so good. I'm like, yes, thank you, God. And then, we also see in his resurrected body, he passed through material objects like walls. What a cool quality. Kind of like superhero kind of quality, pass through walls. Okay, it's really cool thing with our resurrected bodies. And then also, he wasn't bound by the laws of movement or visibility. Jesus appeared and vanished at different times after his resurrection in his resurrected body. And I'm like, dude, I want that one. That's cool. Just vanish, appear. And I'm like, I'm kind of looking forward to this. I don't know about you, but I'm looking forward to our resurrected bodies. And these are some qualities that give us insight into our future spiritual bodies as followers of Jesus. It's fun to think about this. And there's 4 specific things about this passage, about what it says about our resurrected or future bodies that I want to just mention here from this passage. One is they're going to go from perishable to imperishable. Okay, our earthly body is perishable, right? That means our earthly bodies, they age, right? We get gray hair, we get wrinkles, right? Our bodies deteriorate, they break down, they add unwanted matter, right? In areas where we least desire it, where we don't want that matter. How many of you know what I'm talking about? Yeah, right? And then they decompose, okay? But our spiritual body, okay, it is imperishable. Okay, our resurrected heavenly bodies, they're never going to age. They're never going to deteriorate. They're never going to die. They're never going to decay. They're never going to sag. They're never going to decompose. You get what I'm saying, right? They're not going to be that way, okay? They're going to be transformed, and they're never going to perish. I mean, this is something to look forward to. It really is. And then they'll also go from dishonor to glory. From dishonor to glory. So the human body, it's not inherently evil. No. God didn't create evil things. But every human body is doomed to become nothing more than a handful of dirt. That's just the truth. We'll all become a handful of dirt. I mean, think about it. Nothing could be more dishonorable than taking the amazing human body that it really is and seeing it become a pile of dirt. But that's exactly what will happen. Our bodies return to the earth in the form of substance to which they were originally created, and that is dirt. And that's why our earthly bodies are called dishonorable. But our spiritual, resurrected bodies, they're going to be transformed into a body of glory. So what does that mean? Well, one of the meanings of glory here in this context means to possess and be full of perfect light. So this carries the idea that when we get our resurrected bodies, we're going to have this perfect light, this brilliance, this splendor, brightness, magnificence, dignity, the awesomeness of God that our resurrected bodies are full of. And again, that's something to really look forward to. Our bodies will also go from weakness to power. So from dishonor to glory, but from weakness to power. Our earthly bodies, they're really comparatively weak when you think about it. Now, the Greeks, that culture, they really celebrated those with like perfectly trained muscular bodies. They celebrated athleticism and strength, especially when it came to competitions. They were really into that. And they used like principles of geometry to measure the beauty of the human form in Greek culture sometimes. And they had this idealistic symmetry of the human body in mind, especially when it came to their face, and that's what they celebrated. And why am I saying that? Well, as much as you celebrate an earthly body, I mean, let's be honest, it just has issues. Like it does. Like it has issues with sickness, with disease, with limitations, with imperfections. No matter how much you try to celebrate the earthly body, it's not perfect. Just a lot of stuff going on with it. In fact, there are entire industries built around the weaknesses of our bodies. And they try to make money based on the weaknesses of our bodies. And, these forms of, the business, they tell us that, hey, this will help make your body stronger or better in certain ways, right? Like one of these areas is gym memberships, right? It's based on if our bodies weren't weak, then we wouldn't need gym memberships. But yeah, we have gym memberships, right? It's one of the areas of industry that's focused on that. Then exercise programs, you can get those online as well. And then diet plans and pills, that's out there too. And the medical community and healthcare, right? Well, what is that based on? If our bodies weren't weak, we wouldn't need that. But they are, so then we need that. There's a whole industry. Like, am I saying these industries are bad? No, I'm not saying these industries are bad. I'm just giving us an example of this. And then there's creams and lotions and formulas to rub on your skin to try to, reverse the aging process and make you look younger. And those are just like a few of them, right? But I got to tell you what. Man, you could like bathe in cream, You could just, whatever you try to do, no matter what we try to do, right? No matter how much effort we put into making our bodies stronger, the point is they're eventually just going to die. Because at the end of the day, they're weak, comparatively speaking. The human body becomes so powerless in death that a dead body can't even lift a little finger. Yeah, can do absolutely nothing. That's how weak it actually is. However, a resurrected body will be raised with a new power. It will be filled with strength and health. It'll never have disease. It'll never have sickness. It'll never have suffering. It'll never have decay. It may even look like you've been working out for years without you even having to work out. How many of you would like that? Now, just for clarity, the Bible doesn't say anything about that. I just kind of threw that in because I thought it sounded like a good idea, all right? So Bible doesn't say anything about that. I just thought it sounded cool. Do you think that sounds cool? Okay, it's not biblical, but it sounds cool. All right. And then the Bible says we'll go from natural to supernatural. Okay, from natural to supernatural. Now, our earthly body was formed from the dust of the ground, and it was made for the present world where we live. That's awesome. Our new resurrected spiritual bodies, they'll be suited and made for a spiritual life. Okay, like Jesus had after his resurrection, after he raised from the dead. Jesus will actually be that life-giving spirit that fuels our new resurrected bodies. And so while our earthly bodies return to the ground when they die, our new resurrected bodies, they are eternal and they will never die because they are 100% fueled by the life-giving Spirit of Jesus himself. They're supernatural, but again, also recognizable to some degree, all at the same time. And what does all this mean for us right now? As we wrap this up today, I just want to give you 3 quick takeaways that I want to leave you with, all right? And the first one is this. The first one has to do with our significance and worth, all right? You see, our identity, our significance, our worth, it is not wrapped up in the person that you see in the mirror right now. The body that you see when you look in the mirror, it is simply an outer covering, an outer shell that is very temporary. And it reminds us that our value is not limited to something that is so temporary and so imperfect. Our significance and our worth is far greater than that. It just is. So let's not be defined by the temporary, imperfect body that we see in the mirror. Our significance and worth is wrapped up in the person of Jesus and not in the temporary person that you see in the mirror. Even the best bodies, whatever that means, will become equally disgusting dirt. Seriously, think about it. They just all will. So don't allow your significance to be reduced to something that will eventually become dust. You have eternal significance, which is far greater than the outward covering of an earthly body. The second thing I want to leave you with here today is encouragement. You see, we can be encouraged to know that all of our struggles that we face in our earthly body, they're temporary. Yes. Your challenges, your pain, and I can't even begin to imagine some of the pain that some of you are going through and that you've gone through. I don't even pretend to know what that's like, because maybe only one person can understand that, and that's God, you and God. But all your challenges and pain and trauma, all that stuff, it's just temporary. Our physical, our mental, our emotional limitations, those things are all just temporary. Be encouraged, because you'll be getting a new body, a new mind, and new emotions in our resurrected body one day. That's awesome, right? We'll get to spend eternity with our loved ones as well who knew Jesus. That's another reason to be encouraged, because you're going to get to see your loved ones again who are followers of Jesus and get to spend eternity with them in Jesus all at the same time. And this what we're talking about here, this is encouragement to keep us going, during the times when we feel like life is just too much. There's just too much pain, there's too much challenge, there's too much stuff. But we're reminded of this, and we can be encouraged to keep going when we feel like that we can't. And finally, I want to leave you with this, a bright future. There's something so much more than what we're living for in this earthly body. We have a bright future ahead of us. You may be thinking, me? Pastor Cullen, if you just knew my life, if you just knew the situation, if you just knew what was happening to me right now, you wouldn't tell me that I have a bright future. Please don't get my hopes up, but can I tell you something? You can have hope in what God's prepared for you. This hope will not disappoint, because this hope is 100% true. God has prepared for you something amazing in eternity, even when things seem hopeless here on the earth. No matter what anybody else says about your future, no matter what your future looks like and feels like right now here on the earth, I got to tell you something, that's temporary. God says that your future is really bright because you're going to be transformed into a new body that is ready, made to live forever in a state of perfection and in a place of perfection with Him. That's why you have a bright future. You've got a bright future. As a follower of Jesus, you are guaranteed this bright future. So today, I want you to walk away from here knowing that you have a bright future. I want you to know where your significance and worth is found. I want you to walk away encouraged today, and I want you to walk away knowing that God has prepared a bright future for you as a follower of Jesus. Man, this is awesome. Can we all stand to our feet? And as we do this, today I'm going to ask that nobody leave this moment, because this is